Hey everybody, before we get started, I want to share some news that affects everyone on the planet. If you've been watching the TV news, you're probably ready for something uplifting, like life-changing good news. On September 26, 2023, Nassim Haramein published his groundbreaking scientific paper describing the workings of our universe and solving the holy grail of modern physics, how the quantum world connects to the cosmic world. Another way of saying that is how the non-material world produces the material world. Nassim has been on this journey for 30 plus years, and I have followed his journey for the last 7 or 8 years. Publishing The Origin of Mass and the Nature of Gravity is a major inflection point for him, the many of us across the planet who've been cheering him on, and the world in general. Understanding the natural processes that produce the material world leads to technologies beyond our current paradigm of belief, beyond our wildest imaginations. I swiped the slides you're seeing from the September 29 Nature of Reality workshop that I was fortunate enough to attend. I'm sure Nassim won't mind. He wants us to know what's going on and what's coming. Nassim and his scientist team of physicists, mathematicians, biologists, and others have established the International Space Federation to encapsulate and distribute the knowledge and the forthcoming technologies across the globe. Federation means everybody gets it. All of us. The paper is currently under peer review from physicists around the world. It is also available to the public at the link on the screen and in the description below the video. There are investment opportunities in the International Space Federation. Visit the ISF website at the link on the screen. You will also find the link in the description below the video. I expect within a couple of years, we're all going to know the name Nassim Haramein. This is the run toward transformational change, and the current world's power structures aren't very interested in losing their grip. I expect there will be significant pushback in the form of character assassination and all the usual illusions they tend to create. But the pushback to the pushback is our awareness. And now we know. Hello everybody, thank you for dropping in. Let's get ready for another Fly Deep, Rise Above experience. My name is Clay. In this video, deliver a show of shows. We know it's informative and we hope it's entertaining. We are raising awareness and consciousness on the planet. And we do that by sharing knowledge that brings darkness into the light. Today we invite you to fly deep into the first part of what's been called the greatest story never told. It is the astounding story of the ancient Sumerians and their gods, the Anunnaki. Then we'll rise above to reflect on the implications of these topics in our everyday lives. So sit back, strap tight, and let's fly deep. The story of the Sumerians goes back as far as 6000 BC. That's about 8,000 years before today and about 6,000 years after the deluge. The deluge is the great flood most of us know from the biblical story of Noah and the ark. Biblical scholars and archaeologists that are bound to the standard story of history deem the ancient writings of the Sumerians, Egyptians, Romans, Greeks, and others to be allegory, myth, or legend. But Palestinian-raised Zecharia Sitchin had the audacity to ask the question, what if these stories are not myth, but history? It became his life's work and his findings are compelling. The story from the Sumerians begins as far back as 6000 BC, with a people located in the southern part of what is today's Iraq. In ancient times, this area was called Sumer. It is the place of the first schools, ports, written language, arithmetic, domesticated plants and animals, and even cosmology. Records of the first bicameral Congress that date as far back as 5000 BC were found in the Sumer area. And it all blossomed so very suddenly, like out of nowhere. Modern mainstream scientists attribute this burst of human civilization to the fertile lands and the nutritional and cultural effects of having cooked food. The Sumerians, however, credited all they knew to the gods they called Anunnaki. Anunnaki translates to those who from heaven to earth came. This is the exact Hebrew translation for the Nephilim of the Holy Bible. In fact, archaeological finds and deciphering of Sumerian and other ancient artifacts of the time increasingly confirm the accuracy of biblical references to kingdoms, cities, rulers, temples, and customs of antiquity. The first Sumerian artifacts weren't discovered by archaeologists until the mid-1800s, and it took some time to translate them. But once they were translated, they immediately began to challenge the standard story of us. To give this remarkable alternative story the reverence it commands, we'll tell it in a multi-part series. We'll begin in the Sumer and Mesopotamia area and follow the story through Egypt, Africa, India, Rome, Greece, and the Americas. It is a story of gods, goddesses, men, and women. In this first part of our story, we'll bring you the Sumerian story of the beginning. The Sumerians documented their version of the beginning in the 7 tablets of creation, also known as the Enuma Elish. Sumerian cosmology of the Enuma Elish is an epic story of the creation of our solar system. It is a story of the birth and battles between celestial bodies for their place around the sun. What is most astonishing is that this story was written as far back as 6000 BC. And in terms of the celestial objects that inhabit our solar system, they got it exactly right. As early as 400 years ago, our modern science still thought the Earth was the center of the universe. How did the Sumerians get it so right 8,000 years ago? According to their writings, they learned it from the Anunnaki. This is a much abbreviated version of the Sumerian story of creation.
When in the heights heaven had not been named, and below earth had not been called, naught but primordial Apsu, their begetter, Mumu and Tiamat, she who bore them all. Their waters were mingled together. No reed had yet formed, no marshland had appeared. None of the gods had yet been brought into being. None bore a name. Their destinies were undetermined. Then it was that gods were formed in their midst.
So here we have the first 3 characters of our story, the first Trinity. The etymology for the planet names come from ancient Sumerian, Assyrian, and Babylonian languages. Apsu is the sun. Mummu is the planet Mercury, the first planet, and Tiamat is the large water planet that mingled with Apsu. Their waters mingled, meaning the primordial life-giving elements of the universe were coming together to produce the gods, the planets. The Enuma Elish establishes the planets as celestial beings. Nearest to Apsu is Mummu, or Mercury. Mercury is Apsu's emissary. It has the fastest orbit around the sun, the small planet rapidly running around its master. Noticeably, we find in Roman mythology that Mercury, known as Hermes in Greek mythology, is the messenger of the gods.
Their waters were mingled together. Gods were formed in their midst. God Lamu and God Lahamu were brought forth. By name they were called.
In the space between Apsu and Tiamat were born Lamu and Lahamu, Mars and Venus. The names of these two planets stem from the root LHM, which has a derived etymology that means to make war. So now we have Mars, the god of war, and Venus, the goddess of love and war. Lamu and Lahamu. Remember, during its forming, the solar system is a violent place of gravitational forces and radiation where these celestial beings are jockeying for their positions, for their destinies.
Before they had grown in age and in stature to an appointed size, God Anshar and God Kishar were formed, surpassing them in size, as lengthened the days and multiplied the years. God Anu became their son, of his ancestors a rival. Then Anshar's firstborn, Anu, as his equal and in his image, begot Nudimmud.
Before Venus and Mars were fully formed, two more planets were born that surpassed Venus and Mars in size. These were Anshar and Kishar, or Saturn and Jupiter. The interactions between Saturn and Jupiter, Anshar and Kishar, produced their son, their firstborn son, Anu, or Uranus. And Anu then produced Nudimmud, or Neptune, equal in size to Anu. Nudimmud is the Babylonian translation for Ea, or Enki, a name that commands a major role going forward in our story. Anshar's, or Saturn's, firstborn was Anu, Uranus. Anshar's secondborn was a small planet called Gaga. Gaga was similar in size to Mummu, or Mercury, and became Anshar's emissary, just as Mummu was Apsu's emissary. Gaga is Pluto, and the Sumerians placed it as a satellite of Saturn. Eventually, Pluto would be dragged to deep space. At the end of Act 1 of the Sumerian story, there are 10 celestial beings in our solar system. So where is Earth and the Moon? They are products of a forthcoming cosmic collision. The newly created family of planets was far from being stable. The planets were gravitating toward each other. They were converging on Tiamat, disturbing and endangering the primordial bodies.
The divine brothers banded together. They disturbed Tiamat as they surged back and forth. They were troubling the belly of Tiamat by their antics in the dwellings of heaven. Apsu could not lessen their clamor. Tiamat was speechless at their ways. Their doings were loathsome, troublesome were their ways.
The story describes how the planets came together to settle the erratic orbits and settle the solar system. It is a story of how outermost planet Ea, or Neptune, took charge and cast a divine spell upon the primeval waters of the solar system, which had a pouring of sleep effect on Apsu, taking away its power to stir the planets. Perhaps it was gravitational pull or radiation that affected the sun's magnetism and stymied its emissary Mercury. In any event, there was temporary peace, and any new creations would come from the deep, the outer solar system.
In the chamber of fates, the place of destinies, a god was engendered, most able and wisest of gods. In the heart of the deep was Marduk created. Alluring was his figure, sparkling the lift of his eyes. Lordly was his gait, commanding as of olden times. Greatly exalted was he above the gods, exceeding throughout. He was the loftiest of the gods, surpassing was his height. His members were enormous. He was exceedingly tall.
From the deep, pulled in by Ea's or Neptune's gravity, Marduk, a new planet, enters into the solar system, belching fire and emitting radiation. It enters in an opposite orbit to the other planets, and as it arrives, the gravity of the larger outer planets pull it toward Tiamat. The Enuma Elish depicts the story as an epic battle of celestial beings. As Marduk barrels into the solar system, Neptune's gravitational pull causes bulges in Marduk's side, and by the time it reaches the gravitational pull of Anu, or Uranus, 4 pieces are torn away and become Marduk's satellites. As Marduk passes Saturn and Jupiter, it is swung further toward Tiamat. The gravitational pull against Tiamat begins to rip her apart. The story reads that Tiamat bore gods or satellites to bring to the battle. The first of these satellites, named Kingu, became Tiamat's chief god, to whom she gave the Tablet of Destinies, which was a planetary destiny or orbit for Kingu himself. This upset the other planets, who gave Tiamat permission to create another planet. As Tiamat roared and cast spells, the outer planets coalesced around Marduk, guiding him directly toward Tiamat. Marduk's gravitational pull throws all but Tiamat's chief god or satellite into deep space on an elliptical orbit. They become the comets that visit our inner solar system today. Tiamat's chief satellite, Kingu, would become Earth's moon. Then Marduk shot an arrow of divine lightning into Tiamat's belly, extinguishing her life breath. Tiamat had been defeated, but not destroyed. Marduk had established its orbit and reverts back to deep space. Marduk would return to Tiamat, whom he had subdued. On its next trip through the inner solar system, a 3,600-year journey, Marduk's satellites finish off the weakened Tiamat by colliding into her, splitting Tiamat into 2 parts. The upper portion was carried away and thrown into orbit between Venus and Mars. And so it was, the last planet, the Earth, is created. The other part of Tiamat took a collision directly from Marduk himself. That portion was smashed to pieces and thrown into orbit between Mars and Jupiter. And so it was, the hammered bracelet, the asteroid belt, is established. The finished solar system consisted of 12 celestial beings and the asteroid belt. And so it is that at the end of the 6th tablet of the Enuma Elish, this 8,000-year-old story describes the solar system as we know it today, minus, of course, the 12th planet. The 7th tablet of the Enuma Elish describes a celebration of the new creation. The first Sabbath, as artful and epic as the Sumerian story of creation is, the most amazing part of the story is that it is 8,000 years old and it describes our solar system as we know it today, with one exception, the 12th planet, the one called Marduk from the Babylonian version of the story. Is there a 12th planet? And if so, where is that planet? As our technology continues to improve and the depth of space further opens itself up to us, we are finding all kinds of hidden gems, including candidates for the 12th planet. The Sumerians called that planet Nibiru. Nibiru is the planet that brought the Anunnaki to Earth. And in our next video, we'll meet these Anunnaki gods that the Sumerians claim are central to the story of us. Zecharia Sitchin has many critics in the world, but he is the one who did the work, a lifetime of work. Without him, there would be nothing to critique. His relevance is only strengthened by the intensity of the attacks on his work. He's touched on something taboo to the standard story. So we're going to tell the story as he describes it, and we all get to decide for ourselves. So what do you think? Is the Sumerian story of creation the mythical musings of ancient storytellers? Or is it possible that these texts are articulating history as it actually happened? Let us know in the comments. As fun as it can be, this video making stuff takes a lot of time and energy, and unfortunately Jackie couldn't join us for this one, but we look forward to having her back next time. Look for the next video in a couple months. These are highly transformative times we're living through, and it's important to remember it's also an opportunity to shape a new world. So let's keep a smile in our hearts and share it with those we meet. Let's nudge the world toward love. Goodbye, everybody. Namaste.